Right, I want to do a quick rundown of some mapping concepts used in Tribes Ascend. I'm going to use SimCity because it has an easy to model landscaping editor. I don't have UDK nor the willpower to use it. So let's just start off with the one map we think is probably the best balanced, all things considering, which is Katabatic. Now, like I said, I'm just going to oversimplify it. Those are going to be the bases, okay? And I am just going to make the two mountains in the middle. Voila and voila. So that's the basic concept of Katabatic. You now have these hills as well, the spawn hill and everything, diamond sword and blood eagle and all of that. So that's the basic concept of Katabatic, right? And there's some problems with that. Namely, you have the possibility of a stand-to-stand, which is kind of cheap, but in Katabatic it's not that bad because usually you've got your return routes going around, you've got your setup routes going around as well. Now, it's the best map we have, but also if you look at all the other maps we have currently, you will see something quite startling. Namely, the template I have just drawn here is the template of pretty much every map. Look at, we have Katabatic, then we have Arcs, which is two hills with the aqueduct in the middle, two spawn hills, two bases, stand to stand possible. Except here you have the aqueduct blocking a little bit and you've got two sides there. Crossfire, same thing. We have two spawn hills, the floating base, and then we have hills. These are then moved further a little bit out as to be used. You know, there's two then right here and here to provide capping, and then the middle is a big open space. Also, again, stand to stand possible. Then we go to, for instance, Temple Ruins and Tartarus. Again, spawn hills a little bit, they're bigger. Okay, they're bigger, but you've got spawn hills based in the middle of a flat space. We have two giant hills, mostly, well, on the one side it's bigger and the other one's kind of useless. And then we have a chasm in the middle, that's also the Llama Trench. Again, same concept. When we look at Permafrost, the only difference is this is Permafrost because you've got that hill in the middle that goes all the way to the bases, and that's Permafrost. Okay, if you want to see Dry Dock, we just have to just look higher up this a little bit. Voila, there's your Dry Dock with this in the middle, and this is then flatter, of course, but who the fuck cares? And then you have got this mesa here. Voila, you've got basically half Dry Dock here. Again, it looks cooler than Dry Dock this, but right. So I want to show you some concepts that might not be balanced at this point. It might require some metagame changes or whatever, or just some. My idea is always to not band-aid the game, but band-aid the maps. This is something that's worked in StarCraft, so why not in Tribes? Because 50% of balance are maps. By the way, I've just drawn here, while I was talking, the basic floor plan of Sunstar. And if you want to see, because that's one thing, I mean, we've got, I'm not going to talk too much about the new maps, especially not Bella Mega. We don't talk about Bella Mega because Bella Mega is perfect. So this is basically, no, not make justice to it, but we have a couple of hills. Voila, I am now drawing Blue Shift as a mapping concept. We have, well, let's say this is the base, this is the base. Voila, we have Blue Shift. Okay, sorry, with the updates, it's like that. Voila, Blue Shift. Again, I don't think stand-to-stand will be possible the way the bases are set up, so that's an improvement on the base side, but not on the mapping concept as a whole. Because again, facing worlds, yeah, Blue Shift probably just a little bit too standard because you've got the circular mapping routes going around. Canyon Crusade, again, I'm not even going to bother drawing it, I think, because it's, well, let's see here, Steve Valley. No, not Steve Valley. It's a canyon because it's a Canyon Crusade. I've got canyons. There we go. Now you circle, a little bit of depression here, a little bit of depression there, and then a couple of hills around. Voila, and then that, this is that bigger hole now. There you go, Canyon Crusade. Yay! You know, it's all very simple. So the thing is, a mapping concept can actually be quite complex. and still be easy to play. So if we have, for instance, this is one concept. I'll show you two. Just going to lower the terrain a little bit. There we go. So let's say, for instance, by example, we have a hill in the middle that separates. So this hill represents something that's quite difficult to go over. So you'd use mostly, even if you're going to 50, you'd use most of your jets actually getting to the top. You can then ski down at tremendous speed. So this would increase the average speed if you are going to use this hill. Yes. So where are we going to put the bases then? Because we are going to put them right at the base. So what would make that is a very strange map all of a sudden, something we haven't seen before. It'll probably break, but just as a concept. So bear with me a moment here. Offense would be helped because fatties would probably need some kind of a speed platform like on Blue Shift right now or Bella Omega to get over there. Maybe generator powered, you know, make that a part of it. So to get over it. But cappers have a problem because capping routes llama grabs would probably be 300. If you go down here, probably going 300, right? The simple thing to solve that is, of course, to maybe put up this is going very slowly, but do it like this to make a very steep hill right there. So the base, you just hit the fucking hill. So you have to deflect off and go around, and then you're actually using all of this space on the map, because that's another problem that other maps have, is that you never use the outer ridges because only the cappers actually ever come there, and even then they are not utilizing most of it. Now, of course, in 7v7 people could care less, I think, but the idea is that, for instance, Oxnevy, in a very cluster style map, very dependent on the capper as well. So maybe this would make llama grabs a bit higher in speed, and the idea is that the speed would be easy to get but hard to maintain, in the way that once you have the flag, then the capping starts, because you actually have to go back. So then the terrain at the back here would determine how you go back. Of course, you could also just cluster it across, but I think that's going to be, it depends how you balance the map, it's going to be much more difficult. Because you have to have an uphill battle with defense constantly spawning. So it's possible, but you'd have an honest clustering map, kind of like what Crossfire has become, and maybe some Arx Navina play as well. So that could be the 7v7 style play that you see from here, but then the odds capper comes along and actually moves it into the backfield instead of the midfield and tries to get across. Now, of course, you can then cheat with making special gaps. So I've got, for instance, a shallow canyon here that I could make, and like make this little capping trench. If you go through there, bounce off or whatever, or maybe even sets up, have a hill down here. There's a lot of it. Like I said, it's a full map concept that you could do everything with, and not just the two bases with the llama trench in the middle like every other map is. If you go here, then you go up here, then up, voila, you go down here and you escape through here, so you can actually put the sentinel here. That's another thing. If the sentinel's there, you spawn inside the base, or you spawn at the back of this hill or whatever, the sentinel would have a hard time actually catching that capper coming in there. So this, again, is a very crude concept of what could be with a center hill. The second one is then a little bit more complex. If you have that center hill you cannot cross easily. Go around, flattening everything. There we go. Now we take the Mesa, put it around here. That's again an analog of the base. And instead of one hill, we are going to make a crater concept like Thor. You see, because I've been following UDK tutorials already, so I'm hoping I could actually make this map in a tribes-like setting in the near future. So we made this depression here, and then beef up the mountain around the base, and look that I am keeping the gap. I'm keeping a gap here. So this is steep hill, and let's beef up the messes a little bit more again. So this is the base, Right? Very messy, but in the midfield, of course, is full with hills and stuff. So if you've got a impassable hill with maybe a tube through the middle, where you could have like Bella Mega, because I've had this concept for a very long time, even before the tubes were implemented. The intertubes were on Bella Mega, and so yeah, you can have a generator-powered conduit inside the hill, making it part of the base, and actually allowing fatties and stuff to get up this hill to actually cross the map, which would help offense. Offense will need help, yeah, to actually cross, because we're talking about maybe a bit bigger than Rain Dance here. And I'm just going to throw the phone away for a moment. That's always nice when that happens. But right, so basically, shut up, you stupid piece of shit. Okay, thank you. You've got a base, and here's the hill. Now, problem for Kappas. Kappa moseys down along on the grav cycle up this hill, which is hard to do. All right, it'll be specifically made out. It's steep, and you'll have to go quite hard not to splat or use all your jets. Yeah. What you do is you ski down, and then you're suddenly fucked, because you'll ski down, grab the flag, and then there's nowhere to go, because you of course make the base that you can't go nicely in a circle. So you have to set up somewhere in this middle, maybe use the hill to start your route. So as I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, I haven't had a phone call the entire day, but when I start recording, oh yes. So use the hill to start your route. Use the generator-powered conduit to go up. So then it's important to actually take down the generator with your offense, actually making it there. Because again, people will say, oh, D-stack! No, because you will balance the map. Okay? Again, band-aid the map, not the game. So you will band-aid the map in the way that offense can actually get there in time. So you can utilize the big map and the setup. So the offense, of course, will be midfielding a lot when the capper is actually out, because the effort required to get the flag home will be a lot more hard, and it will actually be how do I put it? The way of a skilled capper will not be actually grabbing at 350 or whatever the bollocks, but the skill of a capper will be to actually survive getting home, and with the support of his team. Because let's face it, we always say Tribes is a team game. Right now, a capper can cowboy cap and do a stand to stand if his setup was good and he didn't get sniped. This is only an interaction between capper and sniper most of the time. And you've got, of course, the offense and the defense, and the offense has a problem because the maps are sometimes a bit overly defensive, because it is too easy for the defense to get back into position, and also harder for the offense to not get sniped out or chained out before they can actually do something. The way this map works, like especially this here, is if we have a base inside this hill, and also a spawn hill, which this is a spawn hill. Make a hole, make it a hollow area where the sniper will spawn. So in order for the sniper to be back into position where he can actually have an outlook for the map, which you can never prevent, he would actually have to go all the way up. If the generator is destroyed, the conduit will be down. The cappers have to walk up the hill, and so would the offense, and you'd have a snug little offense clench, which is kind of analogous to a spawn naked, because if the generator would be down, the offense, like juggernauts and shit, would have complete control of the base and could rain down hell and infernal damnation upon it. And the defense would be in a pickle. So you'd have... The thing is, this is another concept from StarCraft, is balance the unbalancedness. If you can shift from unbalance to unbalance, and then you have a dynamic play and could influence the metagame. Anyway, that aside, we have, of course, here the capper is setting up. We've got terrain set up. So let's say, for instance, here's the sentinel's always going to be here or there or whatever. So let's say we beef up the terrain a little bit more, maybe not with a mesa, but maybe with a mountain or whatever, and have a mountainous area used for capping. How wonderful. And we have an easy route, one for the llamas and one for people actually learning, okay, which will not be optimal, but still be very, very obvious. For instance, like a trench here that ends up there. Voila, how beautiful. So it's literally just a giant arrow saying Kappas go here, and then set up and go back home again, right? And it's got to be like again, it's a concept. I'm doing it in freaking Sim City, people. So please, it's going to be like, what, 20-second setup, burp, and then return. Maybe not even that. Maybe with the hill being high enough, we can make it a 10 to 15-second setup, and it's actually the offense that can dictate the kappa arriving, right? And it's, I don't know. There's a lot of concepts here. So this is basically the most, this is already a more complex setup than just the 2 hills and, you know, a stand-to-stand up possibility. If you can stand to stand here, you could probably do that by a setup time about 5 minutes, and then just like I love the expression Baumgartning down and just bouncing off. Then of course the concept of how the base is going to look like is again going to influence, because that's another thing I want to quickly do. So this is basically my more complex. There's a lot of things you can do with hills, you know, that are different from what we have right now. And I think Bella Omega was one of the ideas to really try and exploit something new with it, but then ended up just being 2 bases, and the base was Bella Omega. So there's also the terrain that might make something important. So let's say we are going to make permafrost again, which is 2 hills. And then bigger hill here, smaller hill here. So the problem with permafrost was that we've got the mountain range coming up here. So we've got this bowl where the map is in. Again, a concept that's a hell for offense, because the moment you come out here, you're basically dead. So let's focus on this area here. Right. So another, of course, spawning inside would be death for kappas, for instance. But this is basically permafrost. Okay, let's my wonderful modeling skills. This is permafrost. I've had this idea yesterday when talking about the subject. Is that the problem with permafrost? The concept, the first concept of it was that the base was too small, or you know, the concept with the flag wasn't really working because the generator room was too defendable. Basically, because the offense had to come all the fucking way from there. Didn't have any speed because they were spawning on these hills. But then, you know, this is actually a perfect representation. You spawn here somewhere, have to walk up here to actually get some speed, and fall into this trench and just, you know, mosey along. If you want to go down here on permafrost, go down, then you are such a long way from the base. It's going to take about 30 seconds to actually get there, and it's a hell to coordinate, and that's what makes permafrost a fail. All right, to use some internet meme language. But I was thinking, with Undercroft and with the base on Blue Shift, how about we take the concept of permafrost, which is basically a base well defended with a functional generator. Okay, good. How about we do this? Now, of course, you'll have to use your imagination. The mesa represents the base. How about we do this instead? This is the permafrost base. This is a giant, monstrous building hewn from a hill in ages past. And it has a generator-powered catapult for offense. If you have a flag and you use it, well, no, like in Blue Shift, it's team-bound. There's force fields there. You can't go through it if you're not from the team. Which would actually catapult the offense. This would be the size of Undercroft, maybe, or maybe bigger. Which would make a giant indoor base with levels, where you have the flag in the middle of it. You've got 2 tubes. Like I could represent this visually by making a canyon here. Basically, it's not really working, but that's a hole in the hill where the kappa can come in and do a side to side like nothing's happened. Okay, the same concept that we had at the start with the tiny force fields, but then in a much bigger scale. Have them go through, generator goes down, you won't have catapults for offense anymore. So what would that do instead of creating a D-stack? No, it would actually create a D-stack. Forcing the generator to be repaired, otherwise the offense will take years to actually get out. Then, of course, there's another problem of people coming outside of the base. The base is completely sealed off, aside from the holes where the kappas can go through. So there's a back to front hole as well. There you go. I'm collapsing the entire fucking hill because of it. That's a hole, further back to front. That all works still. But yeah, just an area, and then the offense would be stranded inside the base for the duration of the generator and would actually be capping any, which is a nice little concept. Again, you know, just because you have a big base, a giant base, which is dwarfs some of the center hills in Katabatic, you can completely change the idea. You could also point those catapults to the backfield, forcing people to actually use that. And if you are going to 50-300 as a raider, it will cut down the distance. So speed against the terrain would actually make it useful and fun to play, because this is one thing that people need to understand. People want to go fast in tribes. But speed doesn't necessarily mean unbalance. Because if you have a giant map but everyone's going 300, then it's still relatively a small map. But you need to think about your movement, of course. And you need to think about that. So people actually would be taught skiing instead of skiing down a fucking llama trench and staying there. Because there are so many new players who won't be taught speed. If you have those catapults like in Blue Shift, then people will be forced to go fast, and actually forced to leave the base as well, because people will go, oh, what's this thing? And actually be catapulted out of the base. So they won't be nailed down to become these stackers. And again, this is a concept, this is an idea, and the maps can be band-aided accordingly to fit into a 7v7 thing. Another word of wisdom I'd like to say is that making a map casual friendly doesn't mean that you have to condone what bad players do. You don't have to embrace the fact that they want to generate a hump the entire frickin' time. No. What you need to do to make a casual friendly map is to make the things that good players do easier for people. If you're not going to do tutorials at all, do that instead. But you will say it will cheapen the game. And I'm one of... It's weird that this is coming out of my mouth, because I am one of the large elitist bastards that is always saying, oh, skill, 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 skill. Yes, but the thrust back is a band-aid for new people to get speed, correct? But it caps at a certain speed. So the llama-friendly routes will only be useful in that they will not be optimal. You will still have the regular terrain out there where cappers will undoubtedly find better routes than the ones pointed at with giant neon signs saying, this is a route, use it. So you actually make the maps into tutorials, and they can still be used in competition then if they are balanced properly with the concept. Because then the real map will be used. But that's something you also have to think about, because the maps are 50% of balance, and it will help out the game immensely. Thanks for listening. And if you have SimCity, you can make some mapping concepts yourself, or download the UDK and actually do it properly. Bye-bye.